Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is I once more, Rob, here in the Lair of OmnusI, with another treat for you. Yes, I know, we're getting to another Lair of OmnusI episode. But this last weekend, something came up as a distraction. GameHoleCon in Madison was the first weekend of November, and I had been looking forward to it. It took off, so I was able to make it to the entire convention this year. And GameHoleCon represent. Got to run some games and enjoy myself for an entire weekend. So I thought I would give you a recap on what the game experience was like, what the convention was like, the people, as much as I can in a brief video. This will be far briefer than I would like to make it, but I want to keep your interest, so I'll show off all the toys and everything that I came back with. So the first day was Thursday. I went up in the afternoon because it was only a half day. Turns out that you weren't able to sign into events. The sign-ups didn't start until Friday, so unless you pre-registered for an event on Thursday, you were kind of going to be left out. That didn't mean there wasn't anything to do. The convention dealer's hall was closed, but there were still a lot of gamers walking around. So, a little bit disappointed with not being able to sign in for anything. I walked around and saw a gentleman sitting at a table, going over some notes. So I decided to make a friend and plop down next to him, and we started talking. Turned out, the gentleman's name was Kristen Sowards, and he is the lead of a team of people who are working to create a project for Pathfinder. Now, I'm not a big Pathfinder guy. I'm not going to pretend, but his game is called City of Seven Seraphs. And he's got a passionate crew that are basically trying to create a hub world-like sigil from Planescape for Dungeons & Dragons for Pathfinder. Now, if you know me at all, I do enjoy the whole concept of Planescape, the idea of all the other worlds that you can get into that just expands out the scope of what you can do beyond the fantasy layover of the real world. And Sigil was this great place that was the center of everything. You could justify going anywhere with Sigil. All these different doors that under the right circumstances could put you anywhere in the multiverse. So he immediately hooked me with his idea. And while I didn't play with him because his event was Thursday night, I gave him encouragement. We talked for quite a while. He made the entire weekend far more pleasant. I have to give him thanks for that, because not only was he somebody who helped me pass the time on Thursday night before he had to go to his game from 6 to 10, but he also played in both of the games that I ran. Turned out to be a very reliable fellow, and I wish I could have found him again on Sunday. It would have been nice to talk to him again. But great guy. I wish him nothing but the best for his team and his expansion. They had a successful Kickstarter, and he was promoting it. They're still working on it. He was doing some play testing and taking back ideas that he got from the playing. So that was cool. Very, very nice to make a new friend always. I will definitely be reaching out to him. And like I did for many people, I printed off a number of copies of the one-page synopsis of my Traveling Hat Club role-playing game, put a copy in his hands, and we'll go on about that. But great guy, glad to meet him. I strongly support him. It was a little bit of a downer not having a game to fall into. I caught myself going to the open gaming areas, putting up my Traveling Hat Club, my stack of shiny plastic coins, and just, sitting around waiting, seeing if anybody wanted to play a game. People were kind of in a hurry. They were getting all the things that they needed pre-registration. You have to make sure you get your badge. Couldn't get in without that, which killed me because on Friday I forgot my badge, and I drove half the way to GameHoleCon, had to turn around, get my badge, come back, and then I still forgot my NPC or my pre-generated characters for my game. That was frustrating. I also got a mug stamped with GameHoleCon sign insignia. This let me have infinite refills of soda. That kind of refreshment is very useful. I've had one of these both years, and I still think they're a great investment. Kept me going for the 10-hour long event that I ran. Also, I got Chester, my new adorable Kovalik designed plush mimic. Nom, 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 nom. He goes along with Derpy the owlbear and Bully the boulet. Design's kind of simplistic, but he's adorable. As adorable as you can make a mimic. So I'm happy I have him. He looks great. Very well made, and he's fun. So I got that. I didn't get in on the other charitable things. They had some interesting ideas that you could buy things and the proceeds would go towards charities. I did give plenty of money to charities, but we'll go into that. So the first day, I just kind of networked, but didn't get into anything. Learned the layout of where things were, found out where my games were going to be held, and that was my Thursday. So I drove home at a reasonable time, touched base with the family, and well, Friday morning, set off, realized I forgot my name badge. Glad I did it before I got to the con. Turned around, came back, got my name badge, drove out. So I was under a bit of stress to begin with. And get to the con. Realized I'd also forgotten my dice. So the dealer hall was open by this time. They had just opened by the time I got to the con. So I went to my game store. Chimera Hobbies. Chimera Hobbies is my home game store. Started here in Fond du Lac. They've since expanded out to Appleton, Wisconsin as well, but still a wonderful store. Good friends with the owner. My wife works there, so you know I'm pretty invested. I hold events there from time to time. So it's a wonderful store. I love the place. And was able to get some dice real quick. Full set of gaming dice. But they're black, blue numbers, larger numbers, because as my vision starts to go, and it seems to be, makes it easier to find everything. So I added to my dice collection. Yay! I didn't have enough before. So I got those. I also couldn't resist getting these little freaks. They are little mini Cthulhus in the kind of more fleshy pink color. I got a couple of those. I'll spring those on my player sometime very soon as well. So, I had a little bit of time early on to go across the dealer hall because I didn't sign up for any events for this. Everything came, it was kind of catch as catch can. Because I wanted to spend more time, you know, working with my game and meeting and greeting people and dealing with people rather than, you know, sitting down at a game. Plus, I had made my commitment to run 14 hours of games so that I didn't have to pay for a name badge. That's the requirement, and I was happy to do it. Especially since I had a big time gobbler with Massive Darkness. My event on Saturday was to run 10 hours of it from 10 to 8, and I was there that time. So, okay. So anyhow, Friday, I go across the dealer hall. Immediately, I hook up with Bob Moses, the owner of Chimera. Good guy. We chatted for a bit, but I had other people because right next to him was Larry Elmore. Larry Elmore, if you don't know, he's one of the artists when you think of Dungeons & Dragons. If you think of art from Dungeons & Dragons, it's very likely his pictures may be something that you would imagine. I've long enjoyed his work. My first foray into Dungeons & Dragons as an active participant was in the Frank Menser basic expert sets, and Larry Elmore's art was brought in to punch up the quality of the Dungeons & Dragons books for those series. So I love the classic D&D art that he created. One of the other things I also enjoyed was Dragon Magazine back in the day. It was a treat to be able to get a magazine strictly about my hobby. And one of the things that Larry Elmore contributed when they were looking for material was Snarf Quest, which was an ongoing series about Snarf, the central character, and an adventuring party. Most people remember it for Tellery, the kind of cheesecake female fighter who dressed skimpily but was fun. It was a convoluted series after a period of time, but I'm very happy to say that Mr. Elmore has created a large graphic compendium with all of those. And then he created this as kind of an expansion when he wanted to continue the story, and I was able to procure the Mystical Plains of Sashar. Danger on the Mystical Plains of Sishar, and of course he was kind enough to autograph it as well. So I was very happy to do that. I'm a firm believer in supporting artists, buying their product, talking to them, encouraging them, and when they show up to these conventions, you know, they are a piece of the history. The people who write the books obviously have their place too, but some of that art, without that, I don't believe gaming would ever have gotten as big as it was. And right next to him was Jeff Easley, another person who's created a great deal of iconic Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy role-playing game art. And I picked up this poster from him. This I remember most fondly from the cover of a second edition D&D GM's screen. But on the other hand, he's this piece I think also showed up in Dragonlance in one or two pieces. And his stuff is all over. So he autographed this for me. I was thankful. I wish I could have bought more from him because he had some beautiful prints. Absolutely gorgeous. He had art that were covers from Dragon magazines that I really loved, but you only have so much money to throw at the convention. I tried to spend a little bit at the artists that I really, really liked. And speaking of artists that I really, really like, I skipped over a couple. I wish I could have spent a lot of time at all of them. I got stopped at Brent Chumley's booth, who is another game artist. He's done things for Legend of the Five Rings and a couple other series. And I got this playmat. Absolutely gorgeous. It looks very much like a magical scroll as I can imagine from my games, with particular letters in fire. And he talked about the origin of it, how the letters are kanji, which I don't understand, but it looks great. This will smooth out my playing area so that I have a good base to go on. It was nice. It is a piece of art, but it is also functional art, which I appreciate. In addition to that, I also got a magnet from him, but you know, he has a wide variety of different art pieces. Very nice guy to talk to. Another thing that he did that really caught my eye was he has these juxtaposed images of dragons fighting World War II or World War I fighter planes, and another picture with a dragon going after a tank. We talked about some different things, and he seemed pretty open to ideas as a creative person. It'll be interesting to see what he has for years to come. It seems like he's interested in developing that idea, and I can't wait to see what comes up, because I think that is fantastic. Another thing that I got when I first signed into, I should have said, I got a GameHoleCon D6. I love getting the commemorative D6s for any convention or event I go to. Other things that I got from the dealer's hall, not in a specific time period, because I didn't have a lot of time to spend that first day. Remember, I had no characters because I left my pre-gens at home, so I quickly had to crank out 5 PCs for Gurps. In about 3 hours, I had to crank out 5. Anybody who's run Gurps knows that's not an easy task. I was doing it from memory, so I managed it. That's the long story short. GameHoleCon takes care of its GMs. It has a separate section for a Game Master's Lounge. Earn a coffee, some light snacks, filtered water. You know, things for you know, us people who, you know, do the work to keep the convention going. So my game came up. I was running 4th edition Gurps. The adventure was called Through the Portal of Fire. I had Chris, who I had met before. He was one of the players, and the other 2 players that came up to my table were also energized, excited players who contributed well and participated, which is always good to see. The story was called Through the Portal of Fire, and to drive the plot, the players had an introduction that started out. I realized I had made 3-page introduction. It's just too long, so I skimmed it. Explained how the players' characters were there at the door to the room to the Portal of Fire, that the evil Archmage Vorlix was going to try to open up and summon an unstoppable undead army. So they were there to stop him. They went through. I had an abridged version of the rules and made it very fast, easy-paced, easy to play. They came in, swept through. Vorlix miscast a spell early on in the encounter because their mage was trying to control the undead that he was controlling, tried to strip the power from him. So Vorlix was going to try to blast him, botched a spell, and flung himself through the portal of fire, which was supposed to happen in the game, just not that way. I just rolled with it. So they chased after him into the portal of fire and ended up in our world, in a Southern California high school, in front of a Southern California high school. It was being taken over by zombies. They guessed pretty quickly who was responsible for that, and dealing with the odds and ends of real world without a lot of magic. Matter of fact, the mage found himself handicapped, but he was still rolling well enough to do some magical effects, just not over the top. So, you know, they were able to do things. They got accused of being runaways from a Renaissance fair. I went with a lot of tropes. It was more comedy than, you know, really ripping. The zombies were laughable. You know, many of them were still stuck using their phones. The two of the players broke off and they went into the chemistry wing and nearly started the school on fire, actually, but nearly blew themselves up. The mage went in and got shot, and he spent a while shot up and miserable. Was kind of dragging himself along before he learned he could start sucking power out of the necromantic weave that the archmage had set up so his magic would work. So the players got together and they figured out that he was below, so they found how to get to the steam tunnels from the principal, who was liquored up and had a 44 Magnum. So they got shot once and survived, but then they went along with the principal before she got nailed pretty good and ended up having to flee. And she got blown away by the police because it was funny. They went downstairs, confronted the Archmage, who was binge-watching Masters of the Universe because he connected with Skeletor on so many levels. And big final fight. The Mage Grandolph got knocked out due to a blast of steam from the steam boiler. The players then used the steam from the other boiler to knock out the Archmage and finished him off with the Arrow of Truth. Killed him. They got out, they won, everybody survived. People were happy. I think it turned out pretty well. They bought a lot of silliness, but I think it was an entertaining story, and they had fun. I was very happy to have it done because that was a lot of stress. Running a role-playing game for complete strangers is tricky, and while I enjoyed it, I love doing it, it's hard because you never know what to expect. Fortunately, had a great group. Chris was fantastic. He was really getting into the character. The other players were along for a fun ride. It was good. Then I went back to the game hall, and that's when I started buying stuff. Went over to the Frog God Games booth because I was happy to see that a friend of mine that I made online, Eric Tenkar, was there with his friends. He has done some writing for them at Frog God Games, and his work, Swords and Wizardry Light, I've covered before on this channel. It is a 4-page summary that can get a person into old school gaming and playing adventure games. Well, I went there to get a copy of Swords and Wizardry Light. Continual Light. This is a work that can bring you from 1st to 7th level, so it's got quite a bit of gaming material in it. It has some monsters to add on to the monsters that were available in Swords and Wizardry Light, and has alternate classes and leveling and things. Because he's a heck of a guy and he knows that I support his product, and I do run games at my local convention or my local hobby shop, he gave me a second copy so I can use for a play model. So I have one for my friends. And I got a copy of the Tome of Horrors Light, which is even more monsters. So I'm spoiled. He spoiled me. I thank you, Eric, if you ever hear this. I had a great time, and it was fantastic meeting you and the other frogs. Thank you. I also found out that I was completely wrong on who Bill Webb was. I thought I met him before, but I did not. So I'm just kind of confused who I met at the first con. But Bill Webb, nice guy. Talked to him a little bit. He's a very passionate gamer, and he is the... I'm jealous that he's basically turned a successful business out of his hobby and his pastime, which I have yet to do. I bought a copy of his Dirty Tricks, which are a deck of cards, each one having a small bonus you can hand out to your players, either as a reward for good deeds or at the beginning of a session to kind of level the playing field a little bit, give them a chance to survive some of the different things that can pop up. They also gave me a copy of Bunnies and Burrows Light, the game of role-playing rabbits in a world where rabbits are eaten and predated and have their own conflicts. It's interesting. It's got a nice little map and layout and cards and such. I didn't turn down anything. Let's just put it that way. So it's cute. I also picked up a copy of Swords and Wizardry Complete because if I'm going to, support the Swords and Wizardry thing, I might as well know what the main line is. And I haven't had a chance to fully read it yet, but it has a very nice first edition AD&D feel to it from what I've seen. It's also got all of the books in it. There's stuff for the Dungeon Masters, stuff for the players on how to create their characters and run their characters, and monsters. So, that's efficient. With all of those things together, I think I did pretty good by the frogs, and I'm pretty happy with the value I got. Half Price Bookstore had a booth. I bought The Empire of Imagination, the story of Gary Gygax, and creating Dungeons and Dragons. That's something I've been meaning to read for a while, and now I own it. Got it at a good price. I also drifted over and I made an acquaintance of Tom Anders, who was instrumental with the popularity of the game Blood Bowl with Games Workshop and no longer works for them, which was a story in and of itself. Tom has a nice little thing with Impact Miniatures, which he kind of created, where he's done a couple of things that I fully support. Number one, he's got a chibi line of miniatures. Chibi is an oriental style where critters have, and people have big heads, big eyes, tiny little bodies. They don't look very violent, but it's cute. I got a little pumpkin-headed guy, and I'm not going to be able to do justice because they're unassembled and they're not painted. Later on, I'm probably going to do something showing off my what I can try to do artistically in that, and I'm going to paint these for you and show you what they look like. But a little jack-o'-lantern-headed guy with a top hat and a cape. For my wife, I got a little pig with, again, I can't really do justice until I paint it, but I'll definitely show you. But he's got a flight hat, goggles, and a jetpack. Pigs can fly. She loves pigs. I got a gazebo mimic. It's a assemblable gazebo with one facing of it. A gazebo's face. A mimic to bite you and nibble you when you come to go and visit the gazebo. That was something that was very much in line with some of the Knights of the Dinner Table things from Jolly Blackburn and Kensler and Company. And a giant gazebo, a giant mimic the size of a gazebo is just a fun concept anyhow. And also, I got the dice of unusual size, because if you know me, I love dice. And what Tom has done is he has found ways of creating dice that I've never seen, nor did I ever really think that there was a way of making these dice in as limited of a concept as I have of what you can do with dice. So I now have Roman numeral 1 to 3 on dice. I have a 3-sided die, which is actually kind of, if you look at it from above, it's Y-shaped, so that the number is printed on the top 2 facings. It's pretty clever. A 4-sided die that's rounded with a number stamped on top. So all these dice, you look down, you can see what the number is. So I have a 4-sided die without pointy edges. A 5-sided die. And a 6-sided die. A 7-sided die. And an 8-sided die. A 9-sided die. And a 10-sided die. A percentile die, a dummy die I call them. An 11-sided die. A 12-sided die. A 13-sided die. A 14-sided die. A 15-sided die. A 16-sided die. A 17-sided die. An 18-sided die. A 19-sided die. Another 20-sided die. A 22-sided die. A 24-sided die. A 26-sided die. A 28-sided die. And another 30-sided die with the sharper facing so it doesn't spin quite as much. Now, you may be asking two questions: how and why? The how is, to me, the more fascinating point, because all of the sides are true. They're not all the same shape, but they all have an equal probability of rolling as applied to a very, very powerful computer figuring out all the possibilities, the most efficient way of making them. The other way of how is that some of these numbers are actually cast on edges and vertices of the dice themselves. And one of these days I may actually use my special show-off table, but I think it's fascinating and inventive, and there very well should be games that use this. I have no problems inserting it into my own role-playing game dice file, and there are other game systems that are thinking about using them. So my hat's off to Mr. Anders. It's a fantastic product. I can't wait to start using it, and I'm very happy that I have them in, again, my idiom colors of black with white numbering. So that was something I was very happy to get, even though I didn't, before I got to the con, even think of such a thing. Geek Foundry sold me this nice little dice bag. Kind of looks like studded leather. It's got a nice textured feel to it. I'm not sure exactly what the little studs are. I'm guessing it's dimensional fabric paint. But it's well made, looks good. The clasp is a nice pushed spring tension with good rope and nice end pieces. It looks nice, good production value. It came with a set of green and gold dice, which I didn't know the colors until I got it, but when I got it and I saw they were green and gold, I'm like, oh, that's appropriate. There were people who were secondhand sales. They were selling a lot of stuff that other folks had previously owned, and they were selling it. I got this interesting, I think it's from the Pathfinder series, Fire Giant King miniature for a very reasonable price. Interesting thing, if he's the king, he size-wise is a little smaller than the stock Fire Giant that I got from my Storm King's Fury, or Thunder, or whatever. So yeah, he's going to have a spot use in that adventure when I finally tell that adventure. I also went over to somebody selling Paysetter miniatures, and I got the GameHole had a specific 2 Mimic pack with neat molds for mimics. I'm a sucker for mimics, I admit. But the proceeds from that pack went to charity. Extra Life, if I remember right, which is a great charity. So I didn't really have a problem buying that. I also got a couple of Wereshark miniatures at a very good price. Haven't seen very many Wereshark miniatures before, and just what happens, my werewolves are facing Weresharks at some point in the future, so I was happy to have that. Also, I was over by RPG Crate, had a booth. Chris Hinson, the person who, the power, the force behind it, the driving force, you need somebody like that to drive, to make it better. He is also a major contributor, and he and I talked. Now, if you've followed my channel for a length of time, you know that I used to subscribe to RPG Crate. I thought it was a decent valued crate, although it started getting too many modules and I wasn't getting what I wanted it out of anymore. The value was there, it just didn't have content that I was looking for. Well, looking at some of the past crates, I felt a twinge of regret. There were some nice things. Of course, the t-shirts are always fantastic. He has such fantastic t-shirts packed in. But some other nice things. For example, he had a set on Cthulhu, and while I don't tell Cthulhu stories much, he had these wonderful campaign coins, all set with different... And I'm a sucker for coins. I love the different coins. And these are very nicely cast. They look great. It would take a sprained mind to actually use coins like that in a real-world setting, but if you're running an adventure game, you know, why not? I also gave him a copy of my role-playing game, and Chris, I did offer you, if you want to format, print, and use that in your RPG Crate. If you too follow RPG Crate, you might have my one-page Traveling Hat Club in your crate sometime in the future, which I freely offered him because I want to see his RPG Crate do well. I think he does good work. I also went over to World Builders. Now, one of the things about this GameHoleCon was one of its featured guests was Patrick Rothfuss, who's an author of pretty good renown. I admit I've never read any of his work, but he backs charity. Matter of fact, this is a picture of Mr. Rothfuss with a lamb, and I don't think he's fake. I think he's very sincere in that. And he had they have the charity booth with his charity World Builders. Who works with a lot of other organizations. So I got my son the thing that I got for him, which is this adorable plushy dragon, who I guess is a character in one of his stories. Big dragon eats trees, breathes blue fire. That's how it was described to me. I was sold. He's adorable, and my son really likes him. So my son likes all kinds of plush figures, and that's got a permanent place up on his bed when he's not toting it around. So I was really happy about that. So the second day that I played was Saturday, and I brought my Massive Darkness, and I'm really happy that I have a hand truck because it's a lot of boxes, but it allowed me to do it all in one go. It was also a rainy Saturday, so I didn't want to have to make multiple trips and get all my stuff drenched. So it went fine. The game itself was good, tedious. 10 hours in one spot is rough. Fortunately, I had my trusty mug, and there was a drinking fountain nearby, so I didn't have to just drink soda all day, which, no, I don't want to do that anymore. So I had lots of water, refreshed and hydrated and everything. Chris was there for a lot of it, and Chris was great because he watched my stuff when I went and got some food at about the 5 o'clock mark. He really made that bearable because, sitting with 200 and some odd dollars worth in plastic figures. Now, here's the thing that's wonderful about a con. If you have something with a lot of eye appeal, it can boost your ego tremendously, laying out your stuff and saying, "Oh, look what I've got." I had tons of people who drifted by and they're goggled at the sheer numbers of miniatures that were there. And I didn't even lay all of them out of the trays. Just for easy laying on of hands, I left all of the mobs still in the trays. But if I'd have put all of that out, yeah, but even so, the monstrous creatures and the heroes were eye-catching enough. It was a huge boost to my ego having all these people just drooling as they went by and saw it. I had definitely the coolest looking miniatures game, although I love huge boards and fun stuff, and there were some other games that were good. But at the time, yeah, I was right there in the corner. Everybody was walking by and just goggling, which felt good. I even, at one point, Chris had to leave, and I was kind of sitting there, and one of the guests, another author whose name escapes me at the moment, because, again, I don't read his works either, came by, and he was like, "Oh, this is Master Darkness. I always wanted to play it." And you could tell the relative importance of the guests if they have a handler following them, a staffer to make sure that everything they want. And I looked at him, and I'm like, I remembered the rules. I'm like, you kind of need a ticket to play. And the handler goes, "No, he doesn't. He's good. Let him play." Okay, you get the orange shirt, you're good to go. So he was very intense, very smart. He's very well versed in games. And we sat down, he and his friend, and we played. And, we ran through a successful scenario number 1, I believe. Yeah, 1. And powered through it, and it was really... It was enjoyable. This was kind of the intense rhythm that you want in this kind of game. And he enjoyed it a lot. Although towards the end he was talking to people and he's like, yeah, it's a little arcadey and not quite what I like with my board games, but it's good. And he was a good sport. Not too big for his britches. Very pleasant fellow. Just, again, a bit intense. And we enjoyed it. If I can find your name, and I'll put it in the credits, sir. I had a great deal of fun having you with. If you catch this video ever, if I ever have another game, feel free to belly up at the table. I would love to have you in another one. Unfortunately, while Chris played, he had the worst string of luck ever. We failed the first 2 scenarios we tried. The game does fight back, and it has teeth. And then he had to leave, and then the others came in, and we successfully cleared a scenario, and we drubbed the scenario. We went really well. And then he showed up, and we had 3 people playing. Another person had bellied up. They paid $10 for the ticket for one scenario, which I felt really bad about. And next year I'm going to totally do it differently. But we got through the scenario, and my character actually ended up crushing the monster at the end, but he ended up with just such bad luck and bad rolls and not the right kind of gear, and I felt so sorry for Chris. So Chris, if you hear this, you're a great guy. I wish you would have had more glory spots in the game, but it sounded like you had a lot of fun playing with the toys, so that was good. 10 hours was rough. I was actually there for 9 hours and 15 minutes. It was pretty clear nobody else was going to show up. Chris went off for lunch, and so, but yeah, definitely I earned my badge. I was there for the whole gaming experience. Then on Sunday night, there was, or Saturday night, there was an auction. A lot of well-heeled, charity-minded people, many of them who are the backbone to GameHoleCon, donated some amazing artifacts of gaming history, rare games, high-quality old games, and including at the top of the top of the whole thing, there was a brown box Dungeons and Dragons original D&D set, first printing, of which they're the person who was the appraiser, his name was Bill, he basically said there was only about 1,000 of these in a round. And while this was definitely a played copy, the bidding went up over $4,000. I got to bid at $1,250 with no chance of getting it. I just felt like bidding because I could. If I'd have gotten stuck with it, well, I would have paid, yeah. I would have walked away with it, and I would have had to sell it right away, unfortunately. But I probably would have played a game with it first. Yeah, it was beautiful. White box OD&D set with all with 6 expansion. It was another wonderful set. Went out of my price range too. I ended up walking away with an Arduin grimoire that was supposedly probably bootleg. However, it's still going to be a good read. It's just not very pleasant to read because it's old typecast. So that's kind of hard. And I walked away with a classic TSR board game still in shrink wrap called Web of Gold. I'm not a collector. We're going to open that sucker up and we're going to play it. But that's for me and my family. And I thought and again, proceeds went to charity. I didn't feel bad about that at all. Got a nice little necklace for my wife from a sculptor named David Lee Pancake. Funny name, beautiful stuff. Trophy mounts of like dragons and such on plaques for wall decorations and all kinds of fantastic sculpts. The guy is amazing. And he's one of those people who uses the realistic type eyes and sets them into like jewelry boxes to make mimics and such. Very, very gifted sculptor. Most of his stuff was way out of my league, and I don't have the wall space here in my gaming space. You know, hanging anything on the walls would be going into concrete cinder blocks. So I was content with getting my wife a nice necklace, and she enjoyed it. Little dragon in a bottle with a little gold leaf. It's very nice, very nice. I also made some connections with Mike Battalato, who is a games reseller, accompanies the folks from Frog God Games. Really nice guy, easy to talk to. I look forward to working with him in the future, possibly to snare a couple of hard-to-find artifacts of the gaming space. And on Sunday, everything was kind of starting to wind down. One of the nice things, as a reward, and a thank you from GameHoleCon for running games, they had a drawing from things that were supplied by a variety of vendors and suppliers. I was happy to scoop up the Villains and Vigilantes card battle game, where you play the bad guys who are using the good guys against your opponents as you're trying to do your own thing to take over the world or whatever you're going to do. Haven't played it, haven't opened it up yet, but I'm excited to play with that. Also, as I was just walking by, the folks from Troll Lord Games were closing down, and one of them was like, "Hey, you want a book?" So he pressed Castles and Crusades Rune Lore into my hand. Rather than have to ship these things back, sometimes when you stick around the end of conventions, you get deals like that, or they start having fire sales. So that was kind of the con. It wound down. I was sad to see everybody go. Went back, talked with Eric and the guys from Frog Gods a little bit more. Spent more time with Bob and the folks at the Chimera. Oh, could I forget? I also visited with Jolly Blackburn from Kenzer and Company. Always a pleasure. The guy is really really cool. I kind of grew up with Jolly. He was in one of the editors of Shaddus magazine, and then his Knights of the Dinner Table kind of carried him beyond that. And then they started Kenzer and Company and had Hackmaster, of which I have the Hackmaster's Player's Handbook yet. And he's very real. He's a great guy to talk to in the industry because he's successfully helmed a game. He had lots of extra products that he was pitching and stuff, but he's just a nice guy, and I wish everything for the best for him, especially with some of the recent problems he's had trying to get his Knights of the Dinner Table live movie going, and that just hadn't happened. So really hoping that he has another bite at the apple and gets that going, because Knights of the Dinner Table is a great piece of gaming culture too. So I think that's everything. Met a lot of wonderful people. That's kind of the constants. Us geeks, us gamers, a lot of nice people. Occasionally you'll find those you don't agree with, but for the most part, everybody that I met was pretty awesome. The staff for GameHoleCon, top notch. Do everything that you need. There's only a couple of points they're inflexible on that I hope they'd reconsider in the future, but for the most part, it was well run, excellently executed. I think everybody had a lot of fun. It was safe. It was everything that you need a convention to be. I'm happy with what I ended up with. I've got a lot of fond memories, and I've got a lot of good stuff that I can't wait to integrate into my own games. I've got stuff to paint. I've got stuff to assemble. I'm going to be busy. I've got a lot to do. But GameHoleCon 2017 was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed going. And even though it distracted me a little bit from my responsibilities here at Lair of OmnusI, I've got more material to fight through and bring out for you. So I hope you enjoy sticking with this adventure with me. I hope you do. And I am Rob here in the Lair of OmnusI, surviving GameHoleCon 2017 and wishing you the very most profitable adventures. Thank you.